My name's Helen Valentine. I'm curator of paintings and sculpture at the Royal Academy of Arts in London. We put together this small exhibition of landscape paintings. The title of the show is Opulence and Anxiety, Landscapes from the Royal Academy. The reason for the title is that when we got all the landscapes together, we realised that they told a story that wasn't one just of an unchanging rural landscape, but in fact the historical events of the 18th, 19th and 20th century reveal themselves in different ways in the landscapes. I should perhaps mention that the Royal Academy collection is different from other museum collections. When an artist is elected a Royal Academician, he presents one work to the Royal Academy. This is to represent him or her in the collection, and so the collection is really put together by artists, not by museum curators. This means that it's a fascinating cross-section of art at any one moment. It also means that some artists in the collection are not very well known these days, but in their own time they were extremely popular. When you walk through the exhibition, I think the themes of opulence and anxiety come across in different ways. Thinking about the 18th century, it was a time of great opulence. It was a time when England spread throughout the world and gained in colonial power. And this is reflected in some of the works. We see, if we think about Gainsborough's landscape is a wonderful, sublime, dark landscape with goat and sheep at a well and a wonderful distant landscape stretching away across the mountains. This is a far cry from his earlier depictions of rural England with cottage children and gypsies. We also see in the 18th century the expansion of England overseas, and this again is reflected in some of the work in this exhibition. Two artists, William Hodges and John Webber, both accompanied Captain Cook on one of his voyages of the Pacific. William Hodges went on to travel to India, and included in this exhibition is one of his wonderful Indian landscapes. We also see John Webber's landscape of Tahiti. And again, it's interesting looking at these landscapes that they're using very much the genre of 18th century landscape painting, yet painting a very different and exotic landscape. Towards the end of the 18th century, the idea of national identity becomes stronger possibly. With the Napoleonic Wars stretching from 1793 to 1815, it became difficult and dangerous for artists to travel abroad. And therefore artists started looking more to the various landscapes of Britain to paint, such as the Lake District or the north of England. Certainly by the early 19th century, you get an artist such as Constable, who was completely absorbed in painting the countryside of his childhood. He also started a long tradition of painting outside. We have in the exhibition 4 exquisite sketches that he made outside on little boards propped up on his paint box. He was interested in capturing the fleeting moments of nature, and particularly of Hampstead Heath or Suffolk, places that he knew extremely well. England in the 19th century was an industrial nation, but this is not always reflected in the paintings. Again, the pre-Raphaelite landscape painters were greatly influential in their time, and we see this going right through to the 1890s in a work by Viscount Cole, Autumn Morning. Here he paints the atmospheric effects of the sun beginning to burn away the mists of the morning. What this painting doesn't show, of course, is the network of railways that crisscross Surrey at this time, but perhaps the people living in the cities were more comfortable with the rural idyll rather than the realities of modern-day life. Throughout the exhibition, we see these themes of opulence and anxiety ebbing and flowing, but perhaps there's one picture that one can really see both these things happening. It's Charles Simms's Cleo and the Children. He sets the scene in an idyllic Sussex landscape, and children have gathered to listen to Cleo, who is the muse of history. He painted it originally in 1913, but then in 1915 he heard the news that his son had been killed in the First World War. He returned to the painting and he blotted Cleo's scroll with blood-red paint. For him, landscape could no longer be idyllic. It was tainted by the blood of thousands. In the later 20th century, you get artists such as John Nash, who had served in the First World War, coming to grips with painting landscape again. His are quite desolate, his landscape. There are no human figures. Towards the end of this exhibition, we see paintings which explode with colour, and they reflect a growing exuberance and confidence, perhaps, that the artists feel. Perhaps a greater security towards the end of the 20th century, we're now almost 50 years away from the Second World War, is reflected in these works. David Hockney goes to the Grand Canyon and paints this wonderful image of the canyon in bright reds and greens. Freddie Gore goes to Mallorca and paints the landscape in yellows and oranges and reds. These are fantastic works that really go back to looking at landscape, wanting to experience the space, the colour, the atmosphere. And I think we return to this opulence, this idea of confidence towards the end of the 20th century.